Engines hum along the Delaware River. A line of warships glides past Philadelphia's historic waterfront, banners snapping in the fall wind. Above the decks, sailors stand at attention, white uniforms sharp against a gray October sky. This isn't just another fleet movement. This is a birthday party. For many in the crowd, the moment wasn't just ceremonial. It was personal. Veterans who had spent years at sea stood shoulder to shoulder with young recruits, just beginning their journey. A living bridge between past and future, forged by salt water and steel. But behind the pageantry, it's been a week of serious headlines for the U.S. Navy. A commanding officer removed, a major Allied exercise wrapping up, and a reminder that history isn't just about the past, it's about what comes next. Before we dive deeper, hit like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive from Naval Brief. On October 9th, 2025, the U.S. Navy marked its 250th anniversary with a parade of ships, a salute to the service's birth in 1775 when the Continental Congress authorized the first American warships. Back then, the fleet was made of wooden hulls and iron cannons. Today, it's a global force of nuclear submarines, aircraft carriers, and stealth destroyers that project power in every ocean on Earth. But behind the patriotic speeches and ceremonial salutes, this week also carried two stories that reveal something bigger, something about where the U.S. Navy stands right now. Because while one part of the fleet was celebrating in Philadelphia, another part was facing hard accountability at sea. And far away from the parade, U.S. ships were wrapping up a major multinational exercise that quietly signaled where the Navy is headed next. The parade kicked off mid-morning along the Philadelphia waterfront. Crowds lined the piers. Veterans saluted as warships, past and present, moved in formation down the river. Among them, modern Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, literal combat ships, and the historic USS Constitution, symbolically joining the lineup. Helicopters passed overhead. Brass bands played patriotic scores that carried across the water. From the podium, Navy leadership spoke of a legacy built on readiness, a tradition of excellence, and a future that demands strength at sea. It wasn't just pageantry. This year's milestone came at a moment when the Navy is being tested on multiple fronts. Strategic competition with China, growing Russian submarine activity, Middle Eastern instability, and Arctic expansion. The message from the ceremony was clear. This wasn't just about honoring the past. It was about looking toward the next fight, the next challenge, and the future the Navy expects to defend. And that message lands differently when the crowd includes sailors who've done real deployments, who know that behind every flag wave is a watch stood in a dark passageway, somewhere far from home. As night fell, the skyline lit up in red, white, and blue. The day ended with fireworks bursting over the river, a celebration of everything the Navy has built since 1775. But that was just one part of the week's story. Just one day earlier, the Navy quietly announced something that rippled through the fleet. The commanding officer of the ballistic missile submarine USS Wyoming was relieved of duty. October 8th, 2025, less than 24 hours before the parade. The reason? Loss of confidence in his ability to command. That phrase might sound sterile, almost bureaucratic. Commanding officers of SSBNs, ballistic missile submarines, don't get removed lightly. These boats carried Trident II nuclear missiles, forming the sea-based leg of America's nuclear deterrent. Every decision aboard these subs is bound by layers of security, trust, and precision. When a CEO is relieved, it sends a signal up and down the chain. Something serious broke that trust. The Navy has not released specific details, and likely won't, because of the sensitivity around strategic deterrence platforms. But the signal behind the silence is unmistakable. Even the highest responsibility comes with zero tolerance for failure at that level. Subtle, but real, the timing matters. While the Navy was preparing for a historic public celebration, it was also reminding the world, and itself, that its standards remain unforgiving. One sailor once joked that on an SSBN, if you forget your coffee mug, you can survive. If you forget your checklist, you can end the world. It's grim humor, but also not wrong. While the parade unfolded on the U.S. East Coast and the Wyoming news circulated through the fleet, American warships were thousands of miles away, wrapping up something else entirely. UNITAS 2025, the world's longest-running multinational naval exercise, had just concluded. Born in 1959, UNITAS brings together navies from across the Americas and allied partners. This year, more than 20 nations participated, operating together in complex drills, anti-submarine warfare, air defense, maritime interdiction, and combined task force operations. The exercise unfolded along the U.S. East Coast, with major phases centered at Naval Station Mayport in Florida, Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and Naval Station Norfolk in Virginia. Among the participants, the U.S. Navy, partner navies from Latin America, Europe, and Asia, with Brazil hosting key phases. The exercise is designed to do more than test tactics. It builds the invisible web of interoperability, making sure that when the next crisis happens, these forces can act as one. At sea, it looks like this: a Chilean frigate shadowing a U.S. destroyer in formation, a Brazilian P-3 Orion running sonar drops over a mock submarine, U.S. Marines drilling amphibious landings alongside Colombian forces, and somewhere overhead, Joint Command elements stitching all that chaos together in real time. UNITAS rarely makes big headlines, but to those watching closely, it matters, especially at a moment when maritime competition is heating up worldwide. This year's exercise ran like a quiet flex. The U.S. Navy is not alone out there. So in the span of 1 week, the U.S. Navy celebrated 250 years with ships, sailors, and fireworks over Philadelphia, removed the commanding officer of a strategic deterrence submarine, a stark reminder of accountability, wrapped up UNITAS 2025, tightening the bonds of multinational naval cooperation. 3 separate headlines, but together, they paint a larger picture. The Navy isn't just looking back on 2.5 centuries of history. It's living through a pivotal moment right now, where global tension, deterrence, and alliance building are happening simultaneously. A public celebration projects strength to allies and adversaries alike, and a multinational exercise shows the reach of American sea power. There's a certain poetry to that, pageantry above the waterline, hard realities below. For the young sailors who marched along the pier in Philadelphia, this week was history with confetti. For those on the Wyoming, it was history with consequences. And for those steaming in formation somewhere in the Atlantic and Pacific, it was history in motion. The U.S. Navy isn't just old. It's evolving, watching, adapting. And it just reminded the world it's very much awake. And as this week fades from the headlines, the meaning won't. Navies don't measure their strength in headlines or hashtags. They measure it in presence, in sailors on watch, in ships at sea, in the quiet moments that never make the news. Anchor this is Naval Brief. If you're all hands on deck with maritime conflict, naval power, and defense analysis, subscribe and stay mission ready for the next briefing.